Some men don't just fail you, they bury you alive and call it fate. Thomas Whitmore left his wife to die in the Mojave Desert under a sky so hot it could boil the breath right out of your chest. Sarah was on the ground, a rattlesnake bite swelling in her leg, poison burning its way toward her heart. She thought the man she married would fight for her life. Instead, he stole from her. She felt his hand slip into her apron, pulling out the silver locket her mother gave her when she was 16. He slid it into his own pocket, grabbed their last canteen of water and the small pouch of coins, and without a word turned his back. No hesitation, just slow, steady boot steps crunching over red dust, carrying him farther with every beat of her heart. Folks out here say the desert don't just kill you. It keeps a piece of you for itself. The sound of his leaving was worse than the rattle that had warned her too late. Each step faded into the shimmering heat until the desert swallowed him. All that remained was the sting in her throat, the fire in her leg, and the knowing nobody was coming. Not unless the good Lord sent them. That morning had started like any other on the trail, wagon wheels, groaning, sun climbing fast, heat pushing down on their shoulders. The axle broke before noon, splitting like dry bone, while Thomas cursed at the wheel. She'd stepped under a Joshua tree for a breath of shade, and that's when the rattler struck. 2 quick fangs, faster than a blink. Folks in Calico always said, the desert doesn't take you quick, it watches you suffer first. Now, lying there with her heartbeat loud in her ears, Sarah understood what that meant. She had maybe an hour before the poison won, and the man who vowed to protect her was already a shadow on the horizon. Out here, trust can save you or kill you. The desert has a way of deciding who lives and who doesn't. Sarah figured her number was about to come up. Her lips were dry enough to crack. Her heartbeat was pounding in her ears, and the sun above felt like it was leaning closer just to watch her burn. Then the sound of hoof-beat-ats. Slow at first, like a trick her mind was playing, but they got louder, steadier until a shadow crossed her face. She forced her eyes open and saw a man on horseback, broad shoulders under a dust-stained shirt, a hat pulled low against the glare, and eyes scanning the land like he owned every inch of it. His name was Jack Rohr, though she wouldn't learn that for a while. Out here, a man's name mattered less than what he did when trouble came calling. Jack swung down from the saddle with the kind of ease you only get from years in the saddle. He didn't waste time asking what happened. His gaze dropped to her leg, and he saw the 2 puncture marks and the angry swelling already creeping past her knee. Most folks freeze up at a rattler bite. Jack didn't. He pulled a long knife from his belt, cut 2 small slits over the wound, and lowered his head. The taste of venom and blood hit his tongue. Bitter as sin, but he kept going. Spit, draw, spit again. The old ways weren't guaranteed to work, but out here, you used what you had. Sarah drifted in and out, catching flashes of blue sky and the smell of leather and horse sweat. She felt water touch her lips, the last drops from his canteen. His voice was low, steady, telling her to hang on, though the words barely reached her. When he lifted her onto the horse in front of him, she was light as a sack of feathers. The ride back to his cabin was a blur. Heat, motion, the thump of the horse's hooves. Jack didn't look back once. Men who've spent enough time in the desert know you don't give death a second chance. Jack's cabin was nothing fancy, just timber walls weathered by wind and time. A porch that creaked under your boots and the steady smell of coffee on the fire. For 2 days, Sarah drifted in and out, fever chasing her like a pack of wolves. Jack kept her leg wrapped, changed the dressings, and made sure she drank enough to stay in the fight. In the desert, trouble rarely comes alone, and Jack knew the quiet couldn't last. Then he heard it faint at first, like a heartbeat in the dust. Hoofbeats coming fast. By the 3rd morning, the desert was quiet. Too quiet? Folks who live out here long enough know that silence can be a warning. Jack was chopping wood when he saw a figure on the trail. Walking alone, tall, lean, with a hat pulled low and a swagger that didn't belong to a friend. Thomas Whitmore. Jack didn't need an introduction. The way the man's eyes darted around, the way his hand hovered near his belt, it was all the greeting he required. Thomas stopped 10 paces from the porch. "I'm here for my wife," he said, voice low, like the words might hide the venom underneath. Jack stepped down from the porch. "She's not yours to take." No yelling, no posturing, just the kind of tone a man uses when he's already made up his mind. What happened next would decide which one of them walked away the next moment. Thomas lunged. It wasn't pretty. Fights out here never are. Boots scraped the dirt, fists found their mark, and both men went down hard. Thomas swung wild, but Jack fought like a man used to handling trouble. A hard shove sent Thomas stumbling into the dust, gasping for air. He scrambled to his feet, one hand on his ribs, and spat. "This ain't over," he said, backing away down the trail. His eyes promised he'd be back, and next time he wouldn't be alone. Jack stood there until Thomas was a speck in the heat shimmer. Then he looked toward the cabin where Sarah was standing in the doorway, pale but upright. She'd heard enough to know trouble wasn't finished out. You don't get to choose your battles, only how ready you are when they come back around. And if you want to see how this fight ends, stick with me here. Hit that subscribe so you're in the saddle when the next part of the story rides in. For a couple of days, the desert seemed calm. Sarah walked short laps outside, her legs still tender, but holding her weight. Then came a sound that didn't belong, faint at first, like a far-off drum beat, hoof beat-ats, and every step they took was bringing trouble closer. Then came the dust cloud. Out here you can spot a rider or a wagon long before you hear it. This wasn't a lone traveler. It was a buggy moving fast, kicking up a trail wide enough to catch Jack's eye from the barn. Jack stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. The buggy slowed, then stopped right in front of the cabin. Sheriff Miller climbed down first, heavy-set, sunburned with that squint lawmen get from years in the sun. And stepping down behind him was Thomas. Clean shirt, smug grin, not a scratch from their fight, like the desert itself had patched him up. Sarah froze on the porch, her face draining of color. Thomas spoke first. "Sheriff, that's my wife." His tone had the polished edge of a man who's been practicing his lines. The sheriff looked between them, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Jack, Sarah, I've been told she was missing, and now here she is standing on your porch." Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the porch rail. She told the truth about the rattlesnake and about being left to die, about Jack finding her. She spoke like someone who'd had enough of lies. Thomas laughed, short and sharp. "She's delirious. Sheriff, this man's been filling her head." Jack didn't move, didn't even reach for the Colt on his hip. He just stood there like a fence post planted in hard ground. "She's not leaving with you," he said, plain as daylight. The air felt heavier. Sheriff Miller shifted his weight, eyes narrowing. Out here, the law could go either way, depending on which story stuck. And as the sun beat down on that patch of dirt, Sarah realized this wasn't just a fight for her freedom. It was a fight for the truth. The sheriff's next words would decide more than just where Sarah slept tonight. They could decide who walked away at all. The sheriff stood there for what felt like a long minute, eyes flicking between Thomas's tight jaw and Sarah's steady gaze. The desert wind picked up, tugging at the brim of his hat. Then he spoke slow and firm. "Vance, you're not taking her. Not today. Not any day." Thomas's face drained of color, the false confidence sliding right off him. The sheriff's voice hardened. "And we're going to have a real talk about false reports, and maybe attempted murder." He motioned toward the buggy. "Get in," Thomas muttered something under his breath, but obeyed, the sound of his boots on the dirt fading as he climbed aboard. The buggy turned, rolling away in a swirl of dust. And just like that, the threat was gone. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her legs felt weak, but before she could sit, Jack was beside her. He didn't say a word, just stayed there until her breathing slowed. Over the weeks that followed, the desert seemed a little less harsh. They worked side by side, fixing fences, tending Martha's old garden, sharing quiet meals on the porch. Jack had always lived in solitude, but now the silence felt warmer, and Sarah, who had been left for dead under a burning sun, began to believe in something she thought she'd lost for good: the idea of home. One evening, as the sky turned gold and the first stars peeked out, Sarah looked over at Jack. "You saved my life," she said softly. Jack shook his head. "No, you saved your own. I just gave you the chance out, Air. Chances are rare. Maybe that's why they matter so much. I can't help but think, how many of us have walked away from something or someone worth fighting for? And how many times has life given us a second chance only for us to miss it because we were too blind, too stubborn, or too scared to take it? If you were in Jack's boots or Sarah's, what would you have done if this story stirred something in you? Give it a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss the next ride. The West still has plenty of stories to tell.